Sports Professor Rick Horrow. Beyond the scoreboard, trillion-dollar sports business, law, marketing, deal-making, everything that goes on. Manny Machado, $300 million, yeah, but that's just a tip of the deal-making iceberg. February, one of the busiest months of all of that. Football kind of almost over. You talk to the AAF, they say no, but hockey and basketball continue to thrive toward the playoffs. Racing and golf taking their next season. And all in all, it is a great year. If you want to take a look at all of our 15 to watch, plus 5 tech issues, plus 5 power issues, look at NBCWashington.com, at Rick Horrow, rickhorrow.com, www. Horrow Sports Ventures. All those places, you get the best content anybody can buy. Look for us on our Apple Podcast, Google Play, Audio Boom, Stitcher, iTunes feed, and all of those places. We have a lot to cover, too, today, including an interview with one of the most diverse sports executives out there, Oliver Luck. But first, let's talk about baseball, and can't talk baseball without talking football, at least in one context. The NFL Combine opens in Indy, and Kyler Murray's decision to choose the NFL over baseball will continue to be hotly debated. You know, Rick Edelman, you've heard him before. He's the founder of Edelman Financial Engines, which helps more than 1 million people make financial and career decisions. And I asked Rick if you'd advise Murray to play in the NFL or go to baseball. And he said in the short term, Murray could make more money playing football, but if he were to become a star baseball player, he'd earn more money in the MLB in the long term. Look at the numbers. The top 10 draft picks in the NFL get about a $17 million plus an $11 million bonus package. And by comparison, at least 38 MLB players have deals at large. But like all big financial and career decisions, he said, there's a lot of emotion involved. That's why I think Murray made the right decision, he said, because his heart lies between the hash marks. Besides, if the NFL doesn't work out, he could always go back to baseball like Tim Tebow is doing now. And Murray's decision will come under even more scrutiny, obviously, in the wake of Manny Machado's $300 million deal with the Padres. If Murray's smart, he'll heed Edelman's wisdom and stay his current course. But again, that's his decision. So, segueing back to baseball from that issue, even though we're talking about the NFL Combine, while Cactus and Grapefruit League games intensify, baseball sees its most significant participation gains since 2014. Wall Street Journal says the number of people who played baseball in the U.S. surged 21% from 2014 to 18. Nearly 15.9 million participants. Most of the gain came from casual players who play baseball about 1 to 12 times a year. The ranks of those dabblers grew 53%, or by nearly 2.3 million people since 2014. The growth of more frequent baseball players is a modest 5% over 4 years. However, the numbers are better than most other amateur sports. Tackle football dropped 3.4% in the past 5 years. Hockey and soccer saw respective one-year drops of about 3.8 and 4.3% in 18. MLB credits the growth in part to a program it launched in 15, Play Ball, that holds programs across the nation. Last year, MLB and USA Baseball also started a program that schools use to introduce the game to kindergarten through 4th grade students in gym classes. Drop-offs in other sports are clearly baseball's gain, and MLB is smart to partner with USA Baseball, Ripken Baseball, and other organizations teaching personal growth and leadership skills alongside baseball fundamentals. And if you don't think it produces high-quality players and high-cash register players, hey, Padres general manager Peter Seidler said that Machado's record-setting $300 million free agent contract primarily an instinctual baseball decision. Talked a lot about this, and we feel it makes financial sense for us, but as much of it is a back-of-a-napkin thing as anything. That's a pretty expensive napkin. The 11th hour deal and the club's poor on-field performance of late will make more meaningful financial gains a multi-year effort. Ultimately, revenue flow follows winning, and winning is what really drives that revenue, Seidler said. Every business decision comes with an opportunity cost. For the Padres, as well as San Diego sports fan base, still stinging from the loss of the Chargers, it's not hard to wonder whether that $300 million wouldn't be better spent shoring up the farm system, more than one infamous or famous slugger. But everybody's now talking about the Padres, and that may be the ultimate advantage. Baseball off the field as well, thriving charitably. Cardinals pitcher Adam Wainwright makes a mark in the DR Big League Impact is the charity, and according to Yahoo Sports, the goal is to connect players and fans with communities in need around the world. In 2018 alone, they raised a total of $1.07 million for communities in need with 24 major league players, a partnership with Yahoo Sports, and the generosity from thousands of fans. Wainwright and others spent time last December in the DR in partnership with Food for the Hungry. BLI created the Striking Out Poverty campaign. Those Striking Out Poverty, 200,000 was raised for various projects across the DR, including baseball fields, water systems, and food and farming programs. Players like Wainwright will be hosting top events at top golf locations, as well as private fantasy league drafts in stadiums across the country to raise awareness about Big League Impact for the upcoming season. Great deal for baseball as we move into their season and focusing on some of the things that are really important trend-wise across all sports. So the best thing we can do is to find an executive who has done a whole number of things in a whole number of different places. How about the athletic director at the University of West Virginia? How about the head of the World League of American Football? How about the creation of the Houston Dynamo in the MLS? How about the Houston Oilers old days? How about the recent issues with the NCAA? And now the commissioner of the XFL. And by the way, he's known as, kiddingly and seriously, as Andrew's father. Oliver Luck, friend, contributor to our book that we've told you about before, and a good guy to talk about perspective, not only about the NFL, XFL, and otherwise. We caught up with him at the Super Bowl. Here's Oliver Luck. We have the commissioner that presides over all of football with us today. Incredibly proud, a long and illustrious career. It's Oliver Luck. Oliver Luck, the commissioner of the XFL, and I'm certainly not cynical about it. Don't mean to minimize it. You take a look at some of the information. I'm serious about it. This is a league that's on the way to success, largely because of Oliver's even temperament, certainly need capital, but his bridge building skills as well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So we are here attracting a great crowd, and everybody thought that everybody was lined up for Oliver Luck's autograph, by the way. No, two things. One is they think they're getting Andrew's autograph, and he's not here. Andrew Luck, his kid. And then second is Miami Super Bowl 2020 is pounding coconuts in the background, and we have a line there. So
I can do Andrew's autograph, though, if people want to, if they really want that.
I'm pretty sure.
So they won't go home empty-handed.
By the way, you are probably the only one who could really get away with that.
Yeah. Well, my wife won't let me do it, though. No, she frowns on that sort of behavior.
I'm pretty sure. Nor will he.
Yeah.
So the morning of June 4, June 5, whatever it is, 2018, clearly life-changing for you for a lot of reasons. Vince and you had a lot of conversations before that, but that was your announcement. So give me your mindset as to why you did it and how you feel now.
Sure. So I was working at the NCAA, as you know, EVP of Regulatory Affairs, basically a number two to Mark Emmert, whom I really appreciate. He has a hard job. It's tough running college athletics. And I was aware that Vince had made an announcement last January that the league was going to be relaunched, but I didn't really pay much attention to it, quite honestly. So one of his guys reached out and said, "Hey, would you take a meeting with Vince?" And I said, "Sure." I didn't know him, I had never met him. I was sort of impressed with his entrepreneurial bent in building up WWE into a, publicly traded $billion-a-year company. It's remarkable.
So he reached out to you?
He reached out to me out of thin air, and I ran NFL Europe, so it's a pretty select group, that's run professional football leagues and started them from scratch, right? So anyway, I sat with him, and over the course of a couple of days, and I wanted to really understand why he wanted to do this, and would he do it, as the Brits would say, in a proper fashion, right? Because the first time around wasn't good. Football wasn't good. It was gimmicky, and I wouldn't want to be part of a bad football league with lots of gimmicks. I don't think the American public likes gimmicks, right? Particularly when it comes to something important like football.
Yeah, football, right.
So, he convinced me that he was going to, hire somebody that knew football and could build that league the way it should be built. And everything I've experienced in the last 6-7 months as I've been on board has been just that. He's given me all the rope I need, as they say, to hang myself.
Presumption of, and you're not, presumption of of the He Hate Me days, and now you have until early 2020 to prove that wrong in 8 cities. His comment, or yours, about reimagining football, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so what he wants is a up-tempo game, right? Fewer stoppages, fewer breaks, right? You know, the college and pro balls sometimes can go on forever, right?
Well, there's a good reason. They're commercials.
Well, that's true. That's true. But think of all the split screen that's now taking place, right? So up-tempo game. He wants to be innovative in what we do, right? So shorter breaks, though, and get it all done in 3 hours. I remember back in the old days, in the 1970s or the 80s or the 90s, when games really got done under 3 hours. Right. So I think the talent pool of players and coaches is pretty deep, pretty rich, pretty broad. And I think we can find guys that are able to deliver on that promise, right? So we've got very soon we'll be announcing our broadcast partners. We have 4 games a weekend, right? Eight teams, 4 games a weekend. All those games will be broadcast, every last one, either terrestrially or fully distributed cable. So we're going to have
multiple partners.
We're going to have some great broadcast deals. We're not far from naming our head coaches, right? I've got 4 signed and 4 more to come because I'm acting like the owner of each one of these teams, right? Really? Because Vince owns them, and it's
not as if you're not experienced doing it.
Yeah, I hired coaches over in Europe, right. Multiple times, right, with our league. So it's coming together. We have the gift of time. I wouldn't have taken this job, Rick. Vince said you got 3 months and we got to play. I'd said nope, don't want it. You need time. You need time in any startup.
Part of it, any startup. But part of it is the nuts and bolts of the widgets and everything you need to do stadiums all. And part of it is the reimagining.
That's right. That's right. So we've taken all these ideas. We have a different kickoff we're looking at. We have a different punt we're looking at. We're looking at a 25-second clock versus the 40-second clock. We're looking at a different overtime, right? We're looking at having an 8th referee. Yeah. What a novel idea, that
it's a replay.
Yeah, exactly. So all that stuff, but you have to test it as well, And so we're testing it already with junior colleges. Back in December of this past year, we're working with the Spring League. Might be familiar to you, the New York Hall Football League. Right. These are all, we basically borrow these leagues' players for 3-4 days and run 55 of our new kickoffs to make sure we've got it right, and punts and all that kind of stuff. I've always found it interesting. My dad was a chemical engineer, and he used to preach about the importance of R&D to DuPont, where he worked. Think about the NFL, $14-15 billion a year company. There's not much R&D going on, right? Or college football, right? Very popular, but not much R&D going on. So we want to make sure we test these things as best we can before we, etch them in our rule book.
Right. But the other piece of it is to develop a consensus as meaningful partners. The one thing I noticed about your release was how glowing Mark Emmert was, and it didn't look like a normal comment. To me, it looked like something that was a friend that really wanted to send you off on the right foot. And the same thing, I assume, with Roger Goodell. You told me a story, but tell it in your own way. But so how do you feel like you have the ability to bridge build?
Well, I think everybody in the football business should be rooting for everybody else in the football business, right? In theory, right? I think that a rising tide lifts all boats. I think that we're at a high water mark in terms of football. The NFL is extraordinarily popular, as is, major college ball and even small college ball. So I think there's, plenty of room for everybody to sort of play in this space, right? But I think it's important to have good relationships with the National Football League, or, good relationships with major college football. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I've always believed that. And that's appropriate. So, relationships with Roger or Mark or other folks, to me, they're important. Not just from a personal standpoint, but also from a professional standpoint.
Well, here's my take on that. You've used, and I mean this with respect, you used 3 really good sayings the last 2 minutes that catch my fly. And you got 3, and I'm sure you do everything. But the bottom line is that University of West Virginia, World League of American Football, Houston Dynamo, NCAA, bridge building means chops to be able to walk into a room and say, I've done it, I'm doing it. And so that, to me, is the missing link that other people may not have had.
Well, I guess there's a select group of people that have actually started football leagues and run them,
on one hand.
Or even started, a franchise like the Dynamo, right? It was the old San Jose Earthquake coming down to Houston, et cetera. So, it's a select few, right? So I feel like you've done it before and you have confidence in your experience, all right, to handle it again.
How do you feel about your PR person eating while you're doing the interview?
I feel great if she'd give me a little bite or save something for me.
No, you don't have time.
That's right. We don't have time. That's right. Yeah.
No problem. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is the hardest working guy. I used to say in college sports and television, whatever it is. But now you're the hardest working guy in your amalgamation of future successes. Talk about let's do the cynical and let's do the cynical and get it out of the way for a minute. You got 4 leagues who are, not this year, but next year and the next couple of years. The NFL has gone from WFL to USFL to kind of a free time to at least league was yours. Now you got 4, and the uninformed would say, including one that starts tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah.
The uninformed would say, what gives you the reason? You've had the presumption of failure. Tell us why this is.
Sure. It's really just a couple things. Capital, money matters, right? Any startup, and Vince is putting a minimum of $500 million behind this venture. Time, which we have, and the ability to plan. Very powerful partners, which we'll be announcing very soon. And I think the other thing is this: disciplined decision making. So, think about the USFL. I remember going to Houston Gambler games. The place was rocking, right? The old Astrodome. Jerry Argovitz. If they had stayed in the spring, had disciplined decision making, that would be a very valuable property today. But they didn't. Right? They made.
Talk about Donald Trump.
No, we shouldn't. But they moved to the fall. That was a bad decision. Lack of decision-making discipline. But that's the vision we have, right? Yeah. So you build. But Lamar Hunt was very interested in NFL Europe when I was running the league.
Right.
And Lamar used to say to me, Oliver, you always have to remember who you are, but more importantly, who you're not. So we have to remember who we're not. We're not the National Football League and never will be, right? But we can be the XFL and build our league in the spring, mind our own business, if you will, have good relations with everybody, right, in the football world, because I think it's all important. But I think we can build up brands that people kind of like and watch and follow.
Shift gears a few minutes. Is college football heading in the right direction? You've been there not only at the governing level, ladies and gentlemen, in Indy, but you were there running University of West Virginia, and you had some notoriety on the field there, too. So obviously you had some perspective. Is it moving in the right direction?
I think it is. I think it's in a pretty healthy spot. I think that by and large, it's good. Listen, it better be going in the right direction because the revenue from college football is paying for the swim team and the lacrosse, and people always forget it. But it carries your athletic department. Same thing for men's basketball, right? For the schools not there with a revenue producing football team. So I think the governance of football is actually pretty good. I'm opposed to paying players. That question always comes up, because I think that
paying in quotes, where the quotes.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Yeah.
No, but I do think that you can provide some additional benefits for players. Why not have a scholarship include grad school? Right? Why not have the scholarship include a year abroad if you want to spend time, overseas as part of your education? Right? Why not, 3 or 4 years of insurance after school?
My unsolicited comment that I've shared with guys like Joe Castiglione and others is that your gain, the XFL, is a loss on the governance committee's structure. There's so many things that
is Joe. No question. Yeah. Is Joe not the best AD in the world? Hiring Bob Stoops with that great run, and then hiring Lincoln Riley. Is that not? Well, Joe is the most.
By the way, we'll do it in a minute. We're promoting. We have a book. We'll do it much more time. He's one of our chapter writers.
Yeah.
And we picked only the best, which is one of the reasons why you're there. But the bottom line is that Joe is one of the best linear thinkers as well. So, God bless college football for surrounding themselves with the right people, because you hear playoffs and these 4 teams deserved it this year, so they're fine. What about next year? You don't make decisions. So the other question about looking back, here's a West Virginia guy who went to Texas Law School, did the Big 12 deal with West Virginia in the Big 12. If you had it to do over again today, would you do it?
I would.
Really?
West Virginia culturally is much like the Big 12, and I say that in this sense, right? Appalachia goes all the way out to include Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma State and University of Oklahoma are very much like WVU. It includes places like Kansas State and Kansas and Iowa State, right? Actually we have more in common with the Big 12 schools than we did with our old Big East companions. Syracuse had nothing in common with WVU. Seriously. Georgetown had very little in common with WVU, but Oklahoma State does. Texas Tech does, right? So I really think it's culturally a very good fit, even though the geography is a little bit odd, right? But it's culturally a very good fit for the Mountaineers.
Well, it's as odd as Rutgers being in the West, or it's as odd as everything else is. So that's clearly not the dimension.
That's right.
And if that's going in the right direction, then so what about MLS? And then we'll
I'm a huge fan of what Don Garber Barbara has done. If you go back and look at where they were when he took that job in, 2000 maybe, where they are today, it's incredible. The value of the franchises, the quality of the league. It's got ways to go still. It's still's got to figure out how to break that TV question, right? It's not destination viewing for the vast majority of people, and that's a challenge. NFL is, and XFL hopes to be destination viewing, but MLS has to kind of increase the opportunity for the TV broadcast and expand their audience.
What does it feel like when people stop you on the street and say, how's Andrew? Can you get me to Andrew?
Well, they say, tell Andrew I got him on my fantasy team, so he needs to throw a bunch. I say, you think he cares about that? Really. That's the question.
Right.
That's the question I get.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I said, hey, I'm great. Good job, but I'm not going to.
Ladies and gentlemen, in that context, and by the way, he is one of our contributors to the Sport Business Handbook. You hear a lot more about it, but key people in the industry, Paul Tagliabue's in there, Steve Russ in there, and on and on and on. So it's as good as it gets. Andrew Luck. Oh, excuse me, Oliver Luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick.
I appreciate it.
You bet. My pleasure.
Rick Horrow, speak with you soon.
Well, Oliver Luck has a lot of different perspectives, clearly, but one of the things that he understands is the transformation to digital, and it was confirmed at the Oscars. ABC TV Group ad sales team confirmed it sold off the last available unit for ads during the Oscars at about $2.2 million, according to Ad Age. But the big ad winner this year, digital. Spending on digital channels as desktop, mobile, search, and social media expected to pass traditional media formats in the U.S. this year, according to eMarketer. The spending on non-digital TV, radio, print, and billboards projected to drop. Digital ad revenue about $26.2 billion in the third quarter of 2018, up 22% versus the year prior, according to a report from TWC US. And it's highly likely that when the Nielsen ratings come in for this year's Academy Awards telecast, they'll be down from years past, just like every other appointment viewing mega event, including the Super Bowl. But it's a safe assumption that mobile and social numbers for the global event will leap higher than Spike Lee into Samuel Jackson's arms following his first ever Oscar win. Bottom line is, one of the common themes that transcend baseball into football is clearly the move to digital. So let's talk a little bit about football and a little bit about the NFL. The Raiders appear to be wrapping up a deal to keep the team playing at Oakland Alameda County Coliseum this year and possibly in 2020. Now, San Francisco Chronicle said the announcement is expected this week. 1 year for sure, an option for a second. And under the proposed deal, the Raiders would pay $7.5 million this year, the rent rising to $10.5 million if the team stays on through 2020. And in the event the new $1.8 billion stadium is not ready. Of all the relocation possibilities floated in the last couple of months, from playing in San Francisco to Santa Clara to San Antonio to San Diego, staying put in Oakland, the most sensible plan. And with the Warriors set to relocate across the bay to San Francisco next season, and the A's continuing to push for a new Bayside ballpark, the Raiders will have more of the hometown spotlight to themselves, which could come in handy if their win-loss record doesn't improve. But the bottom line is they're looking up in a number of different contexts. Off the field, NBA, pretty important. Cleveland Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield raises money for Special Olympics. The Ohio-Cleveland Polar Plunge raised money for athletes petitioning for the full inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities. According to 247 Sports, the February 23 event at Edgewater Beach in Mayfield also gave away a pair of signed Bose headphones to one lucky participant. The quarterback had previously announced that he was teaming up with Barstool Sports to benefit the Special Olympics in the greater Cleveland area with a merchandise line featuring flags, sweatshirts, and T-shirts. 100% of the net proceeds go towards supporting the Special Olympics. After Mayfield and fiancée Emily Wilkinson played Secret Santa during the holidays, and the quarterback played a charity softball game to benefit victims of the fires and shooting in Thousand Oaks, the number one pick shows no signs of slowing down his charitable arm. Speaking of outside the box, 3 female coaches in the Alliance of American Football are just the beginning to hire more women in the sports. Jen Welter, alongside Birmingham Iron defensive line assistant Lo Locust and the Arizona Hotshots wideout assistant Jennifer King, are 3 women currently coaching in the new league. The head of football operations and development, Hines Ward, noted that the blueprint for hiring the women in the league was the NFL's Bill Walsh Minority Coaching Fellowship. Locust, a longtime assistant coach at various levels from high school to arena, spent the past year as a defensive line intern with the Baltimore Ravens, while King was an intern with the Carolina Panthers. Ward said that it's good to see that certain initiatives may separate it from the NFL and allow the Football League to create its own identity. Shift over to the NHL for a minute. They had a great but soggy event, the Flyers and the Penguins, the Coors Light Stadium Series. Nearly 70,000 people, a threat of strong rains, though the rain did not come down seriously. The series also had the official fan festival, the American Legacy Black Hockey History Tour, mobile museum showcasing black hockey history, sponsor activations including Coors Light Slapshot, the Duncan Fan Zone, the Oscar Mayer Wiener Mobile. And despite the rain, outdoor hockey prevails again. A great series, even better as it's taken on its own branding. NHL also receives an extension from Snapchat to add hockey highlights and curated stories. They're delivering a new weekly highlights show on Snapchat to recap the top 10 plays of the previous week, and it'll produce curated hour stories for select games and marquee events. NHL bolstering its Snapchat presence because the league sees unusually high engagement on the platform. The Bitmoji outfits for all of 31 of the league's teams, as well as utilizing geo-filters for every team's home arena. NHL Highlights, which will hit Snapchat's Discover every Wednesday, produced by Disney Streaming Services, which also operates the NHL app and the NHL TV out-of-market subscription. The social media engagement numbers are the best of the big American sports, and by increasing the volume of digital content, the NHL should see more fans gravitate to the league. How about basketball? We've talked about that as well, but the NBA ranked third on Fast Company's 2019 list of most innovative companies. The magazine noted in 2018 the NBA broke attendance records for the fourth straight season, had total revenue increase 25%, and saw its streaming service grow subscribers by 63%. Another reason for the NBA's ranking was the 2K League, the first extension of pro sports into esports, which has 21 teams and games that stream on Twitch. The NBA last year made a deal with MGM Resorts, as you remember, making it the first pro league to integrate real-time data into a gambling platform and enable the king of in-game micro-betting that keeps viewers watching each and every play. Other organizations with sports ties that were mentioned: Disney, number 4, Peloton, 14, Fanatics, number 40. And while the NBA's competitive expansion has been undertaken by other American sports leagues, the NBA's international makeup and the success of its many foreign national players have been major factors in its worldwide popularity. So the NBA, clearly big in a number of contexts, as we've talked about. Hulu has its new live sports campaign kicking off, including Joel Embiid, Damian Lillard, and the Greek Freak. The advertising campaigns show players selling out to promote Hulu's live sports content with a number of different platforms and hashtags. 25 million total subscribers across the subscription on demand and live TV plans in the U.S., $39.99 a month. Why does the the NBA focus on Hulu? Young, performance, all of that big, even bigger than before. Here's the final issue of the day, and I want you to contemplate this. Breakdancing among 4 sports shortlisted by the Paris 2024 Organizing Committee for inclusion at the Olympic Games. Sports Pro says organizers have proposed to the International Olympic Committee that surfing, sport climbing, and skateboarding will also retain their places as additional sports on the program in 5 years' time. The IOC will consider the proposal before putting it to the executive board as its next meeting of representatives at the end of March. They got to reach a decision by December 2020. Surfing, sport climbing, and skateboarding all are making their Olympic debuts at next year's Games in Tokyo, but 2024 would mark the first time this multi-sport event has featured breakdancing. Competitions at Paris 2024 would take the form of head-to-head battles in a similar format used when the sport was included in last year's Youth Olympics in Buenos Aires. Paris 2024 said breakdancing was an obvious choice for inclusion, given that France has the second highest levels of participation in the discipline, but behind the U.S. However, the move considered a blow for sports such as baseball, softball, and karate, the additional sports included in 2020. Everybody competes for a small space on the Olympic stage. Well, that's it for our show this week. We'd like to thank Dan Martin, Tanner Simpkins, and Reed Weber for putting this together. We'd like to thank Oliver Luck for giving his generous time. And we'd obviously like to thank you guys for joining us next time when we go Beyond the Scoreboard.